You familiar with the name Wayne Willett? How about Juan O'Savin? If the answer is no, you're not alone. They're the same person. Going by the alter ego Juan O'Savin, Wayne Willett has become a leading figure in QAnon circles. As I'm sure you're aware by now, QAnon followers believe some truly insane stuff. From the bizarre claim that Democrats are Satan-worshipping, bloodthirsty pedophiles, to the thoroughly debunked lies about the 2020 election being rigged. And followers believe some pretty wild stuff about this guy in particular. One of the craziest is that Willett is, in fact, JFK Jr. in disguise, the son of former President John F. Kennedy, who died in a 1999 plane crash. So if you're wondering why you should care about this guy, it's because Wayne or Juan or whatever you want to call him, he might be handpicking your state's next chief election official. Usually these races don't make national headlines, but secretaries of state, they're critical to free and fair elections. And in most states, they have the ultimate say over the entire election process, from voting options to certifying the results. Now back to Willett. He helped found a group called the America First Secretary of State Coalition, a team dedicated to getting right-wing QAnon candidates elected as secretaries of state across the country. For instance, big lie believer Jim Marchant is a leading GOP candidate in Nevada. Mark Fincham, who was seen outside the Capitol building on January 6th, he's the likely Republican nominee in Arizona. And don't forget Trump-endorsed election denier Christina Caramo, who has already secured the GOP nomination in Michigan. All three of those places, they were swing states in 2020. Their potential wins an incredibly scary prospect for democracy looking ahead to 2024, when any one of those people could theoretically decide the results of that presidential election. So joining me now is someone who has written extensively on Wayne Willett, Daily Beast politics reporter Will Sommer. His latest article, it's a doozy. You got to read it. It focuses on Willett's background and his potential influence, if not real influence, over U.S. elections moving forward. Will, an honor to have you here. I mean, you've done a really deep dive into Willett. But first, can you just give us a little bit more flavor, a little bit more background on who Wayne Willett is, if that's truly his name? Where would a guy like this come from? And is there somebody who's funding somebody like Wayne Willett?
Sure, he's a fascinating figure to me. So I've covered QAnon for years now, and he was a name that kind of kept popping up in all these kind of weird ways. As you said, people believe, some of his fans believe he's John F. Kennedy Jr. in disguise. And I thought of him even as kind of a marginal figure. And then suddenly I started seeing these real politicians saying, well, you know, we all trust what Juan O'Savin is saying, all this kind of stuff under this alias. So I started looking into him. This is a guy who's a private investigator in the Seattle area. He was involved in some kind of anti-Clinton shenanigans in Arkansas in the 90s. But he's basically like a workman's comp investigator. He films people to see if you're wearing the neck brace, stuff like that. And yet he's been able to construct this online persona that he's like a super spy, essentially. And, you know, this has given him this credibility. He appears on all these live streams and kind of like hides his identity. And this has given him this ability, you know, to organize Secretary of State candidates and almost like a guru figure to these people, because they say, you know, well, we trust Juan. We do whatever Juan says, that kind of stuff. And so with this story, I wanted to finally kind of get into who this character really is and hopefully wake some people up to some of the forces at play ahead of the midterms.
Yeah, so this guy, though, Will, he's not some, like, random outlier. You've written about some of his high-profile supporters. They include actors like Roseanne Barr and Jim Caviezel. Quickly, let's look at this clip of Caviezel on stage with Wayne Willett at a QAnon conference in Las Vegas last year.
May you join Saint Michael and all the angels in defending God and sending Lucifer and his henchmen straight right back to hell where they belong.
Okay, that clip, wild. Despite having a checkered history, including financial problems, professional credibility issues, how does this guy have such a big influence, not only in the QAnon community, Will, but it looks like he actually is having some standing in the legitimate Republican political community?
It's fascinating. And, you can see in that clip right off to the side, that's Wayne Willett there. He is kind of this like QAnon guru to Jim Caviezel, Roseanne Barr. When I saw him claiming, oh, I'm traveling the country with Jim Caviezel, I thought there's no way that's true. This is just some weird lie he's made up. And then they appear on stage together at this convention, at this QAnon event. So, I mean, in terms of how he builds this credibility, I think it's a sign of how kind of like what a wild west it is right now in the Republican Party, and particularly in some of the fringier elements, although at the point where these people are winning key nominations for statewide office in battleground states, it's maybe not the fringe anymore. And basically, he sort of over time built up his credibility on sort of what you might think of as InfoWars type shows. He would appear anonymously under various aliases and saying, back to the Obama administration that some kind of big climactic event was coming. And then he, essentially just linked up, kind of jumped from conspiracy theorist to conspiracy theorist. But even then, I did not really realize he had such influence until that event last year that you just showed the video of, where these Secretary of State candidates would say, I was sort of at my lowest point. Trump had just lost. I was in my hotel room, and then I hear a knock at the door, and it's Juan O'Savin. And, this idea of almost like this messianic figure coming to them at their lowest point. And of course, they're telling the story, and hundreds of people go, oh my gosh, they explode in the audience. So with this story, I was trying to explain to regular folks, people who are not fortunately really that involved in all this drama, that these people this is not just internet nonsense, though it's that as well, but it is sort of getting this, it's starting to impact our real world.
Yeah, Will, quickly, we used to sit there and we may roll our eyes and laugh about the fact about this QAnon and how completely fringe it is. But let's be frank, it's now no longer fringe. You have QAnon election deniers, QAnon people who embrace these concepts and these conspiracy theories that are actually nominees for office. So you've been following this for a long time. Do you agree that QAnon is no longer fringe? Is it actually a part of the Republican Party now?
I think QAnon increasingly has been welcomed as a faction within the party that is respected and that has a home in the party. Thinking back to 2020, Donald Trump repeatedly refused to denounce them. Now we have 2 members of Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, who have supported QAnon. We're set to have a third, J.R. Majewski in Ohio, who's actually far more into QAnon than I think at least Lauren Boebert is. He cut a big Q into his lawn that you could see from an airplane. And so, I mean, this is, and I think this rhetoric has also been combined to the regular party. We think of all the accusations in Florida that teachers are groomers, that you can kind of just reflexively call your opponents pedophiles. I think QAnon in many ways has succeeded in finding a home within the GOP.
Daily Beast politics reporter Will Sommer, you are a go-to read, and we will continue to follow you to see what's going on with QAnon. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.